Today on Family Talk.
Welcome, everyone, to Family Talk, a division of the James Dobson Family Institute. I'm Roger Marsh with your host, best-selling author and noted child psychologist, Dr. James Dobson. Today, you're going to hear one of Dr. Dobson's favorite interviews from some years ago. Joining him in the studio then was NFL Hall of Fame coach Joe Gibbs. Now, as you may know, Coach Gibbs is a three-time Super Bowl winning coach with the Washington Redskins. During his career, he collected 140 wins, including 16 in the postseason, and he recorded only one losing season during that span. Coach Gibbs also owns a successful NASCAR racing team, which recently won the Daytona 500 behind Denny Hamlin. Joe Gibbs has had a wildly successful career and life in the minds of many people. But today on Family Talk, he'll sit down with Dr. Dobson to share his whole story. Coach Gibbs will explain the many ups and downs in his life and how God has remained the one constant throughout. He also will talk about the importance of family and will stress why it must always come before a career. Well, let's get to the program right now. Here is Dr. James Dobson and his guest, Hall of Fame coach Joe Gibbs, on this classic edition of Family Talk.
Can I call you coach? Is that
Please.
all right?
I tell everybody once you've been a coach, you've been called everything. So, yeah,
right?
Believe me. So
People still call
coach
you,
is great.
People still call you coach?
Yeah, they do. As a matter of fact, my grandbabies call me coach. You know,
Yeah.
it's and so I get a kick out of it. Yeah.
Well, you have done many successful things, but none more than being an assistant coach at USC for the Trojans.
I can remember. I knew you were an
under
SC.
Coach John McKay, right?
You're a Trojan, absolutely. Yeah, and that was great. Those were great years. I got so many stories and everything. See, that was a dream of mine because I actually grew up there in the Whittier, down in Norwalk area, and I wasn't good enough to go to SC, and dadgummit, you didn't recruit me. But I went to junior college and everything, and then, of course, it was always a dream of mine to go back and coach there, and I got a chance to do that.
You know what? It was always a dream of mine that after you left the NFL, you would come back to USC and take one of those open coaching positions. But I'm giving up on it. I don't think we're going to make it.
Yeah, I think our last couple of offers, Pat looked at me and said, "Read my lips." No, you can go. I'm staying here with the grandbaby, so we're not going to do that one.
Well, it is so good to have you here. After being so successful in coaching and then going into the NASCAR racing experience, one would get the idea that success has just followed you all the days of your life. That really hasn't been true, has it?
No, it hasn't been true. As a matter of fact, I tell people, read this book, and I can save you 10 years of misery. Because what's in this book is all the mistakes. And I think it's kind of funny, Jim, because you do wind up, if you wind up winning Super Bowls, a lot of the struggles on how you get there and a lot of the heartache that we go through in life, it kind of gets lost because eventually you win a Super Bowl. And then, of course, same thing in Winston Cup. But certainly Pat and I have had our struggles along the way, and that's what's documented in the book.
Why did you leave football?
I tell you, I left football because I loved it. It was one of the greatest jobs in the world. And let me say this, it took me about 4 long months of just really heart-searching, Pat and I, going away as a family and really thinking about it, because that's all we had done as a family. See, when you coach, the whole family coaches.
Yeah, and it's year-round, too.
Yeah, Pat
boy.
ran everything at home. She took care of the boys, and I really coached, and the boys would come to camp and everything. I really left because both boys had gone off to college, and I thought they would always kind of be with me. They left, and I went to football, and all of a sudden I became a football recluse, and I'd missed J.D. playing most of his football career. I always wanted to see him play, and I did get to see him play a few times, took helicopters and stuff, but Coy was playing at Stanford, and I said, look, at this point in my life, it's really family. I think it's time for me to step out, go see him, which I did. I went to see him at Stanford, play every game at Stanford for the next 2 years, and then really for family reasons, I think it was the right thing. I was scared to death to do it. Once I stepped out, It was almost like God just gave me a
How hard was it to walk away from the glamour and the excitement and the adrenaline and the money and the fame and fortune, all the things that success in the NFL means? How difficult was that?
Very difficult. I think because, like I say, as a profession, you grow up in it. You actually live it. And it monopolizes a lot of your life. If you'd have asked me Monday evening at 10 o'clock during the football season, what are you doing? I could have told you. That's how structured my life was. And but I really think it's one of the great jobs in the world. I loved it. But I really felt like it was time for me, to probably do something else. 30 years of almost anything's enough to, I think.
Joe, how did your relationship with Pat survive the all-encompassing experience of coaching in NFL?
I really think, Jim, that Pat's a special person. And I think one of the things I never recommend for a coach, a lot of my players say, hey, I want to go into coaching. I never recommend that if they've been married for a while. It's almost like you got to grow up in it. Because for 6 months out of the year, I got to tell you the truth, I slept at the office 3 nights a week. She ran the whole show. I got to see the boys on Friday night. I mean, it's a very
structured. It takes a special woman to do that.
Absolutely.
And did she complain about it?
No, it was her life. And she kind of, matter of fact, when I came home, after about 3 days, she'd go, shut up and get out of here. But she was used to kind of running the show. But I mean, really and truly, it was a partnership. And now there was a lot of advantages to coaching, too, besides that, me being away and everything. The boys got to come to camp. There's so many things we got, the great thrill of victory and all that kind of stuff. Pat got to enjoy some things too, but
kids
really
on the sidelines.
Yeah, kids on the sidelines. But I got to tell you, Pat is an unusual person. I think most coaches' wives are.
She had her struggles too. She had a very serious surgery at one point. What was that? About 20?
1980.
Years?
Yeah. 1980. Came home and Pat shared with me that night, I always remember that the doctor said she had an acoustic neuroma, which is a serious brain tumor. And the bottom line, when we came out of that surgery, she had paralysis on one side of her face. It's been, as I shared in both books, it's been one of the toughest things we've ever had to deal with. And certainly, she encourages me so much. She's so strong for this fact. And she always said to me, she says, look, I know that the Lord has promised me in the end, everything is going to work out the best for me. And so
that's the key to your life, Joe.
Yeah.
You really are serious about your love for the Lord.
Well, I am, Jim. And I think the reason the book, and I had a spiritual father one time, he made a great statement. I says, I think I may write a book on that first one. He goes, do you have anything to say? And so what prompted me on this second one was the fact that so many people walk up to me. And I guess, and think about the way the world sees things now. They walk up to me because I've won Super Bowls and won Winston Cup championships. Yeah. Okay, they don't really know a lot about my background, but they will say to me, hey, Joe, how do I become successful? Well, when they say that, I know what they're meaning. See, they look at me and they say, how do I make money and I become president of the company or win football games or whatever it is in my profession? And really what I wrote the book for this reason. Yes, that's very important, occupation and making money, finances. But there's 4 other key areas that they're not even thinking about when they ask me that. And that's the same thing I did when I came out of school. I was interested in those 2 things because the world told me if I get enough of that, money and enough football games, I'm going to be happy. Well, then halfway through the first few years there, I said, well, wait a second. If I don't have somebody to enjoy this and go through it with me, relationships, life's going to be a disaster. So I added relationships to it.
That is the bottom line for this program because it's a message that absolutely must be heard. You are, Joe, a man's man, and you fell into a man's trap. How many men do we know who have become obsessed with work and so driven to accomplish those things you just talked about that they lose sight of everything else that's important, including their relationship with the Lord. They lose their families. They wake up in their 40s or 50s. Some of them never wake up, and by then it's too late.
I got to tell you, it's a natural trap. And people say, well, how does this? It happens this way. The world says. And how does it say? How does it sell it? Well, it has all written material, TVs, movies, all these different ways. And basically it says those 2 things. This will make you happy. And so, Jim, you're right. Most of us charge out through life, and we go 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and all of a sudden, I look back and I go, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
As I accomplish these things, I realize that's not the most important thing in my life. Really, what's the most important thing Pat and I are going to leave on this earth? They're going to be our kids, our grandkids, and the influence we're having on others.
Well, I thank God that you learned that. I had the same temperament that you have, still do. And I'm a type A, and I'm a go-for-it person, and I got pretty excited about life when I was young, and there were opportunities out there for me that I never would have anticipated. When I got out of graduate school and wrote Dare to Discipline, I mean, everything came at me. And Shirley was a little less tolerant of that than Pat. Shirley, in a very loving way, just said to me, that's not going to work. You're making a big mistake. And she helped pull me back. I would have probably made an enormous mistake in our family and in our life if it hadn't been for her and for my father. And also because of my love for the Lord, and I began to see things in Scripture, and he began talking to me. But boy, I tell you, it is a trap. It is a trap. It looks so right. And in my case, I had the excuse of doing it for the Lord's work. You know?
Amen. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I had it all rationalized. Of course it's important for me to do all these things. And Shirley, was so loving in the way she approached me. She didn't nag me, but she really did keep me from making a mistake, because I had everything I needed to be a workaholic.
I sat across the table from a self-made billionaire that owned the Washington Redskins, Jack Kent Cooke, and the only time I ever saw tears in his eyes, and he said to me, Joe, said, I've messed up. And what he was referring to is relationships. He'd had 4 marriages, a lot of broken relationships in there, and here was a guy that had done what the world said, made all the money, was a billionaire, and had climbed the ladder to success. And yet I'll always remember that about Mr. Cooke, in that meeting we had.
J. Paul Getty, who at one time was the richest man in the world, said he'd made a mess out of his life. Mm-hmm. Even though he made all that money, he couldn't figure out how to make it with a family. The word excess really describes you. If people look at you, they would think the word success would be the defining word, but you say excess was the defining word. Yeah,
it was. I was so driven, just like you talked about. I mean, I definitely wanted to be successful, and I kind of fell into the plan. And like I said, mine was strictly through hard knocks, and that's what's in this book. I made, in almost all these areas, I made serious mistakes. And thank God that there was a loving God there, and I had a little spiritual father and rededicated my life in 1972. And then what started happening in my life, I started discovering through God's Word that He really is our head coach. You and I are playing the game of life, the biggest game of all. He's our head coach. And He left a game plan here. Mm-hmm. I was playing the game without studying the game plan. I was a fool. I jumped off into finances.
You got I got almost had to declare bankruptcy.
Well, I really was technically bankrupt, the biggest mess in the world, Jim. But basically,
$1 million in debt.
No, millions, and that's a testimony too. Because no matter how big the mess is, and this is one of the biggest. I sat with 2 attorneys and 2 law accountants one day, and we spent 6 hours and couldn't add up everything this partnership was in. And I was the only guy that was left. Everybody else filed bankruptcy and left.
What kind of business was it?
It was real estate investment. And I shows you how smart I am. I said, well, you can't lose in real estate. But, if I'd only followed one principle in God's book, He says in there, God speaks over 2,300 times about finances. Why? Yeah. Because He knew money was going to be important.
Absolutely.
And
I wasn't more about money than He did about heaven.
Amen. And so in God's Word it says, never co-sign a loan unless you're willing to pay it off. If I just followed one principle, I could have saved myself so much heartache. But I think I needed to go through that. And the great thing about belonging to the Lord, I sat down after that was over with, that experience. And Pat and I at one point took everything we had, gave it to a bank, they paid our bills, and we got a per diem to live on. That's how bad it was. But when we got out of that 4.5 years later, I sat down and wrote 15 things that I learned through that experience. And number 1 on that list was listen to your wife. Mm-hmm. See, I found a way to kind of make her do that. She didn't, those are the times I've gotten the biggest messes in my life. When I don't listen to godly counsel, I don't listen to my mate, and then I try and kind of, because I'm forceful, find a way to get her to agree to it instead of us just mutually agreeing. So anyway, there's some real lessons in the book, and that's the real reason why I wrote it, because I think I do get so much attention, so much of it I laugh at. You know how smart I am. Most people out there don't. And so I kind of laugh at the way the world pictures that, too.
Yeah, but NASCAR is doing fine for you,
NASCAR,
right?
I think maybe that's why God was putting me through those things. I think I look at that. Now we have a successful business. I'm so paranoid now. I got so many people that look over it. I know I'm not a good businessman. And so I have so many people looking at it. That you probably recognize some of the people. I have them come in as consultants. We meet once a month. We really are very careful. And JD's a much better businessman than I am. he kind of oversees everything. But it's a big business. We have 200 people working for us now, and we're racing cars all across America, and it's a big deal for us.
Have you learned to control the pressures and to not continue the tendency to overwork yourself?
I'm much better now about that. I think football is a unique life. You drive yourself. I was the technical person. People were waiting on me. When you're in that role, there's always 11 people, and everybody's counting on you. The position I'm in now is more of a businessman, helping to pick the people. Yes, I work with people problems, but I'm not the technical person. And the guys today that in this sport, the crew chiefs are what they're called. Yeah. They're just same as coaches. They go on Thursday, come back on Sunday. They have their guys that go with them, and they technically make the car run. Those are the guys that have the pressure in this. So it's a different kind of pressure. I tell people paying the bills, that's a pressure, but I have a different pressure now.
All right, Joe, let's address the guy out there who's making the same mistakes that you and I were inclined to make. There are a lot of them, and there are a lot of women listening to us today who are saying, if only my husband knew this, if only he would listen. Maybe they'll get a CD of this, and maybe they'll listen to the former coach of a Super Bowl champion. Maybe you'll have some influence with them. Give your best shot.
My best shot would be this. To me, most of life, I've told you how sharp I am, most of life to me is common sense. And to me, I think I can prove to almost anyone that God exists. If I look at this watch, and I could tell anybody out there, if you look at that watch, do you think there's a watchmaker? Everybody goes, just through common sense. Yeah, absolutely. Complicated. Now look at the world, the way this world is crafted. And so at 9 years old, I'm kind of looking around at school. I'm being told that two amoeba happened to hit in a muddy puddle of water 2 billion years ago, and I was in an accident. I wasn't real sharp, but I looked at that and I said, I don't like the sound of that. And in church, my mother had me in church. The pastor there was telling me something totally different. Said there was a God, he loved me, he made me, he crafted me, he knit me together in my mother's womb, he made me special. I got up, went forward in church, said, hey, that makes more sense to me.
How old were you?
I would say to anybody 9 years old, I would say to any man, woman out there, if you just think about the world and the way this is put together, there has to be a world maker. Once I made that commitment to him and asked him to come into my life, okay, then the mistakes I made was still veering off and chasing my own desires, knowing when I discovered that this book, the Bible that God left here for our game plan, our game plan for life, is a relevant book. And many people out there I feel like are struggling or arguing Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. I tell you what I want to know. I don't want to know what they think. I want to know what God thinks.
Absolutely.
So this book is a relevant book. Now think about this. If we're going to live life, and God put us here, he covers it all. He covers every aspect and everything we need to know. If you want to know something about relationships, he tells you.
It's all there.
It's here. And so I would say to any person out there, I would say, look, I've built a business. I've been involved most people wouldn't argue with me on that, on game. If you're a team builder out there, if you're a man and you're trying to build a business team, I need to be studying God's Word, what he says about who is the greatest team builder of all time. Jesus Christ had 3 years to change the world. Was he good at picking people? He picked 12 guys that there wasn't one of them a star. And he took them, and the way he talked and communicated, which is big in team building and all those other aspects, he covers it all in here. So if I'm a businessman, I need to be studying this Word and what God has to say about it.
Let me add my best shot to what you just said, Joe, and I agree with you completely. And I want to speak particularly to the guy out there who's a Christian, but he's kind of nominal. He goes to church, but he hadn't really taken it seriously. He hasn't made the commitment. The best reason I can give him, which is what hit me when my daughter was born, is that if I don't do my job in terms of introducing my kids to Jesus Christ, if I miss it there, I'll never see them again after I die. This is the end of it. Maybe I'll make it to heaven. Will they? And that, for me, is the greatest motivation in life. This life is merely a preparation for the next. And if you get that priority right, nothing else comes close. Everything else is just sort of marking time.
Well, if we're going to be playing this game, we're going to play it forever. One night I was up talking to Coy one night, and I was sharing with him a couple things like I do when he goes to bed, and I was talking about heaven, and we were reading a little bit about it, and musicians and harps and all this stuff. Of course, here's a kid racing bikes and all these kind of things. He looks up at it and he goes, "Dad, I don't think I'm going to like heaven." And I say, "Coy, why would you say that?" And he goes, "Playing a harp?" He says, "I'm not there." I says, "Let me tell you something, Coy. We're going to have to leave this up to God, because if it's playing a harp, I'm not sure I'm going to be excited about it either." You know what I think heaven's going to be? God made us this way. He made us competitive, right?
He sure
I think it's going to be some 1,000-year football games. It's going to be some 1,000-year races. And if not, he's going to work a miracle in us.
And I'm going to make the touchdowns this time, right?
Amen. I may even be a star up there and get to carry the ball. So
we are made a little different than women. And, that competitive edge is there. And for some guys, a whole lot more than others. If our listeners, the men out there, are among those that are driven from within, be careful. That's dangerous. You can make the biggest mistake of your life. That's what you're trying to say in Racing to Win, isn't it?
All men have a desire, I think, to really do something great. And I see great pastors and people have great visionaries like yourself. But I think if we're not careful, that drive, it needs to be channeled. And we need to be studying. We need to know what the game plan is. And like you said, Jim, I made a rededication in 1972 just off what you were talking about. There may be some men out there that said, "Hey, look, I believe in God. I have a personal relationship, but I just not, I'm not on fire." We need to get in God's Word, serious prayer, Bible study, and get with a group of people in a church of Bible study.
And you're using your present responsibility in NASCAR to win people to the Lord inside that sport, aren't you?
We have a dynamic chance for opportunity inside of motorsports. Think about this. We're going to 36 cities, moving all around the country, taking a lot of people that have real good testimonies, and the people there come for 3 and 4 days. They have nothing to do. They're ready to listen. We're doing some exciting things inside of motorsports.
Bible studies?
Bible studies at race shops. We have a full-time chaplain at our race shop, Bob Dyer, and he works with all of our people. We have Bible studies each week. We have small group studies. So
you led Dale Jarrett, one of your drivers, to the Lord, didn't you?
Well, actually, what happened? Dale Jarrett and Jimmy Maker, our crew chief and driver, the famous driver Dale Jarrett, they came on board with us, and it happened to be the year that we won the Super Bowl in Minnesota. And we went to the Super Bowl. They came to the Super Bowl chapel service, and I'll always remember that. And in that service, when it came time to make commitments to Christ, they stood up, and both Kelly and Patty stood up too. And it was one of the greatest nights I think I've ever been part of. So
well, it is a pleasure to have you here. I've loved you and appreciated your friendship for all those years. And anytime you write a book, you come back, will you?
Well, there's so many people praying for y'all. I think you're helping to change the world. And I'm praying in America, we need a moral awakening. That's what I'm praying for.
That is the only thing that's going to save us. Racing to Win is the name of the book. Subtitle is Establish Your Game Plan for Success. Not excess, but success. And I recommend this book to our listeners. Now, you talked a lot in this book about going too fast and overworking. You're going to run out of here. You're on a wing and a prayer literally today, trying to get to where you're going.
Today's probably not the best day for me to be talking about that. I got up at 3:30, and we're going to go all day and race the cars this afternoon in Phoenix. But it's amazing the way you can get around the world. But
well, I got up at 4:15, so I don't know if I'm any better.
Well, I've got my priorities. We kind of enjoying things as we go now.
Blessings to you. Give a hug to Pat for me.
Thanks, Jim. I will.
Okay.
This is Roger Marsh, and you've been listening to this Friday edition of Family Talk. I hope you enjoyed this uplifting conversation between Dr. James Dobson and NFL Hall of Fame coach Joe Gibbs. You can visit our broadcast page at drjamesdobson.org for a link to Coach Gibbs' popular book called Game Plan for Life. There you can also learn more about his illustrious career as well as his current work on the NASCAR circuit. Simply go to drjamesdobson.org and then go to today's broadcast page. On a more somber note, Joe Gibbs' son J.D. was mentioned a few times during the program. Sadly, J.D. Gibbs passed away a little over a month ago after battling with neurological disease since 2015. We ask that you keep the Gibbs family in your prayers during this time of grief and sorrow for them. I'm Roger Marsh, and I hope you've enjoyed this week of broadcasts here on Family Talk. Join us Monday for another exciting and informative conversation right here on Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
This has been a presentation of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute.
This is Dr. Tim Clinton. Thank you for tuning in today for this edition of Family Talk. Every day we strive to bring you programs that will help strengthen your family, and to do this, we need your help. We need your prayers, and we also need your financial contributions. You know that Dr. Dobson has been fighting for the family for over 40 years now, and he's not about to stop, believe you me. Here's Roger Marsh with more information on how you can support the ministry of Family Talk.
And friend, thanks to generous listeners like you, Family Talk can reach more and more listeners with practical help and encouragement. To support Family Talk with your best gift, go online to drjamesdobson.org or call 877-732-6825.